So hi, good evening. My name is Patty Banks, and I'm a supervisor at TriHealth EAP. That's the Employee Assistance Program. I've been with TriHealth for about 8 years, and prior to that, I spent about 20 years working in public children's services, among other things, in my career. So I've been working in the mental health field for about 30 years. So I'm really glad to be with you all tonight. I'm sorry that this is the reason, but I am glad to be with you all. I like having conversation during the presentation, so please feel free to make comments, ask questions, whatever, as we're going through. I much prefer it to be interactive than me just sitting and talking to you. So my goal is for us to spend about the next 45 to 60 minutes talking about COVID fatigue tonight and coping with COVID fatigue. Like I said, I'm happy to have a dialogue as we go through it. So as I mentioned, I'm part of TriHealth EAP, and we're part of the corporate health division of TriHealth. And so what that is we're basically the employer-facing division. So that's our ACMED centers, our workplace well-being and fitness folks who do our biometric screenings, all that kind of stuff. And the employee assistance program is just one part of it. Obviously, we do training, we do counseling, we do all kinds of different things as part of our program. So tonight, we are going to talk about some of the challenges about dealing with COVID and associated with kind of this long-term pandemic that we're dealing with, some strategies to sort of deal with that and to help us cope with it, and have some discussion about how we can still thrive and make this a positive time. So the reality of COVID is that it has changed every single facet of our lives. I don't care, even if you're still working in your same job, still have some similar things, we're all being impacted in some way, shape, or form. And it's really affected all of us differently. And we were talking earlier, and we were talking about how, parents and kids and teachers and how they're trying to manage all this. Everybody's being impacted in different ways. And so, it really has kind of taken away some of our typical go-to coping things. Or even if we still have a lot of those, they're probably not working as well as they were before. And so we're going to talk about some different ways that we can do some things tonight. The other thing about the COVID fatigue that I think is really important is that it really has become almost this political hot potato too, the whole COVID process. And so that's impacting families, it's impacting, friendships, impacting all those things, because different people have different ideas about how they want to deal with it, how they want to cope with it, and that can create some real kind of tension between people. And so that's definitely affecting people as well. So in the beginning, we kind of started this and we had some really fast changes that happened. Everybody was, kind of came on, we realized what we needed to do, and workplaces changed and different people shifted and people went home to work or didn't, and but started doing things differently at work. And I think that kind of that fast thing, it's sort of like what happens, I'm going to use this analogy a lot, when a natural disaster occurs. People had more grace, there's a lot of gratitude, people were just trying to get through it. When things happen that quickly, we really try to, people are trying to roll with it and manage it all right in that first kind of initial wave. And many of us were kind of aware of the dangers, but most of us didn't really know anybody, especially at the beginning, that had COVID or had been gotten sick with it. Then we kind of move into this, second stage, this very prolonged second stage. Most of us are kind of dealing with that wear and tear, long-term stress that we're feeling. It's taken a long time. I don't know about you all, but I kind of, when this first started, I sort of envisioned, all right, we'll go home for a few weeks and everybody will sort of go to their houses and we'll get a grip on this and then we can stop dealing with it. And then quickly, within just a couple weeks, it was sort of like, oh, okay, no, that's probably not going to happen. And so I think, now we're kind of in that longer term. People don't have as much grace for each other. People are frustrated with the process of all this. People are frustrated with how long it's taking, what's happening, with just in general, the I like this word, the weariness of the isolation and the careful measures. I mean, having to think about having a mask every time you walk out the door can be very frustrating for a lot of people. And so, the other thing that I think has really happened is the holidays, I think, brought up a lot of stuff for a lot of people. It brought up a lot of grief and loss. If people had lost loved ones, or just the mere fact that the holidays were different this year. It wasn't as easy to gather. You still may have gathered, but it just wasn't the same or wasn't as easy. Or people chose not to gather, and that was challenging also. And so, just dealing with all of those different things, I think, has created a lot of difficulty. I think going back to that analogy of, when a natural disaster happens, people, again, initially have that really great lift of energy of how they're going to rebuild and how we're going to move forward, and then that really starts to wear thin. And the process of things tends to get to people and really take its toll. So this is what we really want to talk about tonight. How do we deal with kind of this COVID fatigue that we're all feeling? What are some strategies? I want us to walk away with some tools so that we can cope better, and then really find a way to build that into our daily lives. I really like this quote, "Who we are is what we do every day." And so how can we build your toolbox? How can we build small things in to help make things better in a general way? So the first thing I want to talk about is staying informed. There is a lot of misinformation out there on social media and in different places. And so I think, being informed is a really good thing. I think we need to tune into the resources that we feel are good, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and then neutral news sources, I think, can be helpful. You want to stay up to date, but I also think it's helpful to kind of balance that. And so, we'll talk about this more, but living it 24/7 is really not helpful either. So the other thing is, when you get informed, you're going to come up with a plan for yourself, and you all have done that. But I think what's helpful is to balance that plan with what is safe enough for you. So it was interesting today. I opened up the paper today. I ended up eating a late lunch because I had something else to do, and boom, there it was, Hamilton County's in purple. I was just like, alrighty then. We've all been sort of waiting for that to happen. There were a couple times when we thought for sure it was going to, back in the fall, and now that's where it is. So how does that affect us? What do we need to think about? I think what's helpful is to remember that you've already been working a plan. That's what you've been doing, that's what you've been following, and that's what you need to continue to do. I think when we start taking in that news and we start hearing those things, sometimes we can start panicking or thinking, oh, maybe I need to do more, I need to be more aware. And I think just to remind yourself that you have been working the program, you are following what you need to do, and that's okay. I think we can easily get caught in some of that obsessive thinking, where suddenly I have to clean every single thing. I know early on I had a lot of friends telling me that they were like wiping down every grocery item that they were bringing home, and we've come to now know that that's probably not necessary, and that probably isn't carrying things in the same way. It's much more the respiratory issue. So I think it's helpful to just kind of make sure you're getting that from good news sources and thinking about your plan. So let's talk about being optimistic. So this is what I was going to get into. Limiting the amount of news or social media that we're taking in. I think it's really helpful to take social media breaks or news breaks. When we start to get overloaded with the information that we're taking in, it really can get to us all. And so, just being aware of how much you're taking in and tuning in to what happens to you too. So how are you responding to things? I'll be honest, when I find myself yelling back at the news, I know I'm done. That's my big cue for me. That's my red flag. You need to be done. You need to turn it off. This is not helpful anymore for you to do that. So what are some ways that you can step back? Like for me, it helps me to maybe just take a quick glance at my news feed instead of getting into it or listening to a whole news story. I'm still aware of what's going on. I have an idea of what's happening, but I don't have to get into the nitty-gritty. Reading the newspaper is also helpful for me because I don't have to read every article. I can just kind of take a quick glance and look at it that way. So what works for you? And that's what you need to think about. The other thing is we have to kind of adjust our expectations, Over the holidays, I kind of suggested to some friends, because I thought it was a great idea. She asked me if we were going to get together, and I said, I'll be honest, I'm sorry. At work, they're basically imploring us to not go out and be social over the holidays. And so, they're already having nurses work extra, blah, blah, blah. So, we're not gonna do that this year. And so I was like, why don't we have a Zoom dessert, and we can all get on Zoom, and yep, no, nothing. Well, that's okay. That was okay. That was her choice and that was our choice to not go. And it was fine. And I think it's helpful to just kind of adjust our expectations about what does and doesn't happen. Trying to find the positives in things. So, what can you find in your own life that's been positive? And kind of looking for those little things. How about you guys? Is there anything that you have found that's positive that you've experienced through this whole process? Thanks.
I actually had COVID-19 2 months ago, and I was really ill, so I'm still dealing with a lot of the long hauler kind of stuff. And I think one of the most positive things for me was I had to spend Christmas alone because I had to still, rest and stuff. And I think one of the most positive things was my mother came by and she just brought like my Christmas gifts, and I just thought that was like really kind. Just people dropping off, because I was too tired to get and do things, so just people like dropping off groceries, sending cards, like just little cards, greeting cards. Hey, how are you doing? Just the little thoughts, like the little things is like what made me feel good and made count. Like the little bouquet of flowers. Nice. Just tell someone you love them, stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. It really reinforces our belief in humanity, I think, when people are kind in that way. So that's great. Good for you. Anybody else? Thanks.
I've always felt that Cincinnatians never spent much time outside, living in other areas. And I hope that this is going to be a pattern for good, because
I agree.
There's enough studies, and hospitals have done a lot of studies about the outdoors and the healing capabilities and all that, both actual and vicarious.
Yeah.
That part I've witnessed, and I think it's been a good change here in Cincinnati.
Yeah, absolutely. We're certainly appreciating it more than we ever have.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I discovered All Park.
Oh, great. It's such a
When we
beautiful
shut down,
place.
I was forced to go other places, and I and my wife found All Park. And we've also learned and seen and walked on the new Wasson Way.
Nice.
Which is a very, very, very creative outside event.
Yeah.
So I think I was pushed outside, really, because ain't nothing much except reading.
Right.
I don't mean except reading, but reading.
No, right, absolutely. Yeah, good. Those are great examples. Thank you all so much for sharing that. I think it's also helpful to, so I love it. People just name some diversions. Getting outside, that's a huge thing. Any amount of sunshine, I think, that we can get, hard to find these days in Cincinnati, that's for sure. But, anytime we can do that and be outside in nature, I think that helps all of us. But also having diversion activities, I'll be honest, my husband and I were like adamant. We were never going to get Netflix. We were not going to do it. We were not going to fall into that. Well, yes, we actually did. Because we were like, okay, we don't really have much else to do, so let's watch what we want to watch. And so, and that's been really fun. We've watched some really fun things and seen some different things. And so looking for those ways and those opportunities that are fun, I think, especially when you're feeling down or you're struggling, go out looking for that stuff that's fun for you. I had people were like just naming things, little videos online, little cat videos or baby videos or, veterans coming home to their kids. You can find all kinds of really good stuff out there that kind of can make you laugh or smile, and that's all good. We need those diversions. We need that positivity in our lives. We need for that to happen because, there's just too much negative coming at us, and we have to find ways to balance that. So thanks for that. All right. We also want to feel empowered. So empowerment helps us be resilient. It helps us focus on what we control. And we really work at our own strengths. The reality with COVID-19 is that we have a lot, not always, but we have a lot that we can do to protect ourselves, you know. We can wear masks, we can wash our hands, we can social distance, we can stay home when we need to, you know, we can do all those things, and that can really help us. It gives us kind of our best opportunity. But there are things that we cannot control. And that's the reality of it. You know, we can't control how other people manage that. We can't control how other people, you know, if they choose to wear a mask. We can't control how much toilet paper is in the store. You know, how long this will last, how people will react. But what we can control is we can control our own attitude about it. You know, how we follow the recommendations. You know, what are we comfortable with as individuals? Turning off the news, as I mentioned, you know, kind of limiting that negative intake, and then looking for productive ways to use our time, whether that's reading, whether that's finding new parks and new places to go, whether that's you know, being kind and giving grace to other people, like the people that reached out to you, which I think is so great. When we have those kind of opportunities, that can be really, really helpful. And then we want to talk about how do we create structure. You know, we all need that, and our daily lives have been impacted in different ways. So for some people, you know, it always sounds nice to not have structure and for things to be looser until that's what happens. And then it doesn't feel so good. You know, I think of the few times when I've been unemployed, and it sounds great to have like this kind of big chunk of time off, and then you're sort of there and you're like, okay, what do I do now? You know, and so how can you build in structure, whether you're working at home and that just feels weird, whether you're working and you're continuing to do that, but having that structure in our day can be really helpful. And I think especially when we feel sort of at loose ends, and I think that's what's happened with COVID, is that a lot of people feel at loose ends because things are so different. We don't have kind of our same daily routine that we had to fall back on. We can't go to our same restaurants. We can't have our same, you know, things that kind of marked the time in the same way. I've been saying since March that it feels so weird to me. I'm like, you know, it was March, and then all of a sudden it was like August, and then it was the holidays, and I feel like time has just taken on this very weird feeling. It's because we don't have those same markers that we generally use to mark time and to get through it. And so, you know, building in that structure for yourself could really help. You know, if you're home, and you're working at home and that's different, you know, can you set up your office in one place and then leave it when you're done? Can you take 5 or 10 minute breaks to walk around or walk outside? Because, you know, when you worked in the office before, you had time to go and to drive your car and be in the sunshine or whatever, and you walk back and forth, and we don't have that same thing if you're working at home. So, you know, if you get antsy and you're in the same place at home, because, you know, when you're at work, you sometimes get up and you talk to people and do whatever, you know, find ways to move around and to do different things so that you can help stay engaged and help yourself stay engaged. It's really about figuring out what works for you. And then, you know, just arranging regular phone calls with friends or family or whatever, or Zoom calls. I think that all those different things can be helpful. Any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about so far? Anything else? Okay. All right. So we want to kind of focus on, you know, looking at our coping skills. You know, like I said, in the past, we had a lot of coping skills that we use that we're not able to access in the same way. You know, we're not able to gather with friends in the same way that we used to. We're not able to go out to restaurants in the same way that we used to. We're not able to just do some of those regular things that helped us get through our day-to-day life. And so, you know, what can we do to help ourselves keep moving forward when some of those same things are not available to us, you know? Vacations are definitely something that I look forward to. We love to travel. I love to go places. Well, that's not an option right now. And we've had more staycations in the last couple years than we've had in a really long time. Well, that's okay. So it's, you know, it's figuring out ways that you can, so we've been planning. So we're planning for the future. And that kind of keeps us optimistic and hopeful and thinking about, you know, how we move forward. You know, I think it's important to think about those losses that we have. I loved it. I'm going to use this as an example. You talked about the club was closed. And so what you did was you went and you found other things to go out that kind of filled that gap. You found Alt Park, you found Wasson Way, you found those different things. And I think that's really what we need to be doing, is finding those alternatives that are helping us get through things. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. And then we want to talk about how we want to cope with our feelings. So, sorry, I got lost in the time. I was looking at it and then I was thinking something different. We want to look at, I completely lost my place. I just had a brain difficulty and I'm so sorry. Hi, welcome.
Sorry,
No.
my car doesn't quite drive as fast as it used to.
I understand that. Sometimes we know what we're feeling and we can have strategies that help us. I think one of the things with COVID, and I know that I certainly found this, is a lot of times we're just kind of struggling along and we feel like we're doing fine and we're managing, but yet there's kind of this weird malaise, this weird kind of, almost feels a little depressed, and even if we're, to be honest, I feel incredibly fortunate, and I think that all the time, I've been able to continue working through all of this, and yet there's still kind of this weird feeling that I think is hanging over for a lot of people. And so, it's hard to deal with those things when we can't necessarily identify exactly what it is or why we feel that way. And so, I think what we need to be looking for is how do we recognize that, even if it's just saying to yourself, okay, I know I just feel weird these days, and I don't know how to say it, and I don't know what it really is or what it really means, but I know that it doesn't feel great. And so, looking for ways to be patient with ourselves, to look for opportunities to just kind of talk about it with other people, to express and release those feelings with people that we're close to, and to look out for like support groups or even counseling sessions if it gets to that point where you feel like you're really struggling. There actually are a number of support groups out in the community, and they're done via telehealth or Zoom, that I think are really helpful for people in meeting a need. And because I think we're all kind of like at different places at different times too. So people may have chugged along for a really long time and then suddenly hit a wall because of X, Y, and Z happened in their life, and now they're really struggling with it. And so I think it's helpful to just kind of recognize that that is what it is. It's pretty normal. That's why they've increased you see a lot of the commercials and different things about if you need help, there's mental health help available to you. And it's because they're recognizing that, people are really struggling. Yeah, thank you.
I tend to talk to a lot of people, and I'm very free with telling them how I feel,
Good.
in a way to get them to say how they feel.
Good.
And one of the most oft mentioned emotion is depression. And I tell people, I'm depressed, and then that kind of gives them the freedom to say, well, hell, so am I.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I've discovered on a personal level is that I am ADHD anyhow, and those of us who are that way have a hard time sitting still.
Yes.
And OCD on the other hand. So I've learned things about myself that my wife always knew. It's just that this has exacerbated them, and man, it is tough.
It is
But
tough.
it's not to release the feelings. I think people keep their feelings stuffed inside for the most part,
Yeah.
and that ain't helpful.
Yeah, it's not. Good for you. Thank you for sharing that.
I was really frustrated because in the beginning of COVID, I lost weight, and then the gyms closed and stuff, and I gained weight, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. But I just had to be patient with myself and remind myself it wasn't my fault. It's temporary. Either the gym will open back up, or I create a little plan for myself to go walking some more and just cut back on the chips and snacking. I'm sitting a lot more. Obviously, I'm going to gain weight, so I just had to be patient with myself because it's temporary. It changes. So.
Right.
Right. Good for you for being able to kind of talk yourself through that. And I think that's great when we can do that. And we all have the ability to do that, but it takes kind of having a little bit of that perspective, like both of you kind of talked about, which I think that's very, very helpful. So Thank you both for those comments. I really wanted to follow up because I liked what you said about the depression, and I think it's just the reality of how this has all impacted us. And so, most of us never really considered ourselves depressed in the past or whatever, and yet I think just all the changes that we've had to deal with and kind of that constant, I call it like almost exhaustion, that COVID fatigue, that exhaustion of having to deal with it, I think has just really created that for people and made it just so much more difficult. So that's a really good comment. Thanks for saying that. Anybody else? The other thing is naming it, just like you said, can make us feel more in control of it. So when we name it and we call it out, that can help us kind of feel like we're taking back that control. So as we talked about, we kind of got into some of this, some pretty normal feelings during COVID is kind of that uncertainty, how long is this going to last, our concern for our safety, that fear of getting sick and then having to deal with it when you actually do, or guilt, kind of boredom, that stir-crazy feeling. I think a lot of people are feeling that, between COVID and winter and all of that, it's really getting to folks. And then that kind of worry about, job security and all those different kinds of things. And even if you don't have that same worry, that there's still some of those things there about just what's going to happen and what's going to go on. So, these are very common emotions. And the reality is there are no quick cures, but expressing them can really be helpful, as we just talked about earlier. As we've that analogy that I've used a number of times about that natural disaster, once we kind of get through that initial shock, then we're trying to fix it. That's what we do. That's how we manage, is we fix it. This is not something that we can fix. This is something that we can only ride through and get to the other side. We're very much creatures of habit. And it's one thing to choose to change something that we're doing in our life. It's a whole nother thing to have that impacted by this kind of invisible assailant that we're dealing with. And so I think it's helpful to recognize those things. So how do we get to the point of living and not just existing? I really talked about this a lot with clients in terms of especially the holidays, people were just talking about just trying to get through it, just trying to get through the holidays or get through this chunk of time. And how can we really work at trying to make choices that help us do more than that, help us really thrive during this time. I really like this story. I had a friend it was just really, really important to her to help her kids not just exist during this time, but find ways to have fun and to do things together. And so what I think is neat, and not just from her, but from other people, I've heard a lot of people talk about how kind of that family game night has come back in a very different way than it had. I think we'd gotten away from that between all the activities that kids do and just different things like that. So we've gotten back to some of those regular things, eating together, dinner together, the family game night, just different types of things that I think are really helpful. And I think even people that don't have children, kind of the way that they connect with people and do things and socialize has changed, but they found things that are beneficial of it. And so, they're able to do that. We had just this weekend, we had a call, and it was a friend who just retired, and they're down in Florida, and another friend who's up in Oxford, and us. And so it was really great to get together and have that conversation, even though they were way down in Florida, and that was not something that we would have, maybe we would have thought about it, but probably not. We probably just would have put it off until they're back up here. And so it was really fun to be able to do that. So looking for those opportunities and ways to do that. And I think it's helpful to look for other things that you can do. What is it that you want to do during this time? What have you always thought about? Is there something that you want to learn that's new? Is there something that you want to try? Have you always wanted to clean out your basement? What is it that you wanted to do? Yeah, but really, I mean, it's like you didn't have time to do it before, but maybe now you do, or maybe now you're willing to tackle one small part of that. Most of us don't really ever want to clean out our basement, but, it may be something that you had as a goal. And so, and it feels good when you've accomplished something like that and you can actually get it done. So.
We did clean up the basement.
Did ya?
Hand to God, I did, yes.
That's awesome. Good for you. That's great. And then we want to think about how do we connect. I kind of talked about, doing that with our friends. I love this idea of social snacking. So it was not something that I had actually ever heard about. And then I read it and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. And this is kind of those easy conversations or quick interactions that we have with people at work, people at the grocery store, people at whatever. And it's amazing what that actually does for us personally. And the hard part is we don't have as much of that anymore. This and people working remotely and just all different kinds of things has really limited how we have that. And so it's looking for ways to incorporate those things into our life. How can we do that? How can we look for meetings? I mean, you guys came to this today, so that's great. You're still trying to get out there and make those connections. And obviously you're still coming to the sports club, so I think that's helpful. But it's looking for those ongoing ways to make those connections and to do those different things that you're trying to do. Any thoughts or questions or ways that people have worked at getting connected? Thank you.
So my company, we have offices in different cities, and I'm in a remote office, and most of my team is in different offices. And in the beginning, when work wasn't so crazy, we used to do happy hours on Thursday nights, where we would just after work, we would just get on Zoom, and I think one went from 5 till 10. And it was just a really good way to I didn't know a lot of people on my team because a lot of them were new and I never met them before, but it was a good way to get to know people, and they got to know me. And it was just fun because we didn't talk about work. We just talked about fun stuff.
Yeah.
So, and we did that for a couple of weeks, and we'll do it here and there again, but we got really busy. So I think people just don't want to do anything with work now, but it was really nice when we did do that. So.
Right. That's great. And that's something that you probably never would have done necessarily with people from all over,
No.
Before this happened. But because this happened, it made it more, like a better thing to do. So that's fantastic. Good for you guys.
I just connected with people I haven't talked to in years.
Nice.
You just reconnected through Facebook or through called a number and hey, Tenda, or that's my name, but hey, just want to catch up or whatever. And I was surprised how receptive they were. Because they were just as kind of bored as I was, so then it just was nice reconnecting. So
Yeah, good, really good. Anybody else?
I already spent a lot of time with my neighbors, but we created our own little bubble quarantine together, and we saw each other still every single day. So it's nice to be able to maintain a safe space with people that are super convenient to you.
Oh, that's great. Well, that is fantastic. So do you guys do things? Do you
Every day?
That's great. That's really great. Good for you. Yeah. And while you probably would have had that anyway with your neighbors, this made it just probably all the more sweeter. And my guess is that you'll continue to be closer than you had been before, just because of going through this together. That's so great. Good for you. Anybody else? Okay. So as we kind of talked about, connecting during the winter months is hard. It was really nice when we could get outside throughout the summer, but there are ways that you can do it. Obviously, you guys still are doing some of those things, but doing some of that virtual stuff or having your pod, so that's great. Podding with people. This is something that NPR actually put out there, and they made some suggestions about how to connect during the winter months. Looking for those outdoor activities. Work virtually with friends or family on a shared project. So one of my friends, she and her niece and nephew, they watched the same, or I guess they listened to the same podcast, and then they would get together and talk about it. And they just really enjoyed doing that. And then they had one time where they cooked something all together, and everybody was online at the same time, and they were cooking and laughing and whatever, and they just had a really good time. So I think looking for those types of opportunities, even during the winter months, can be helpful. Hopefully here, a few months, we'll get through this in terms of the cold, and we'll be able to be back outside, and that will make life easier for everybody. But in the meantime, there are ways that you can do it. Anybody have any creative things that they want to share about connecting during the winter or doing things in the winter?
What do you say?
Any creative ideas about connecting or doing things during the winter?
I don't know if it's like really connected, but like, before I got at my job when I was working, we adopted a family for Christmas that was like in a shelter, and so we went and like, we ordered like gifts on Amazon, and then like I wrapped like all the gifts, and then we just dropped it off, and like, it just felt really good to like give back to people.
Nice, great. And we'll talk about that too, but that's a fantastic idea. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's talk about how we help kids cope with COVID-19. The reality is this has just got to be such a... Does anybody have children? Have children? Okay. But you can still help other people's kids too, and I'll just touch on this briefly. Children look to parents, and if parents are calm and cool, that's how they're going to respond to it too. But I also think it's okay for us to role model when we're stressed, and that fact that how we handle that, and to say it out loud. If you're stressed and you're stressing and you're feeling irritable and edgy, if you share that with your kids and talk about that and say, you know what? Mom's had a really rough day today, or Dad's had a really rough day today, and so I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go relax, or I'm going to go read a book, or I'm going to go do some yoga, or I'm going to do whatever, do some meditation. That can be helpful because kids can see and learn and understand that, parents can have a difficult time and can still recover from it. And that's what we're really trying to show them. And then, just working with them on keeping their regular routine, reassuring them that things are safe or as safe as they can be, and then praising them for taking, any preventative measures that they do. I think this has got to be a really hard time for kids, and so the more we can help them through that, the better. And then another suggestion is to find a COVID hobby. Has anybody done that? Found a COVID hobby while they're doing it? I think, creating something that you're doing that gets you into that flow. And they talk about, artists and musicians and things, you really get in that flow when you're doing it. And then finding ways to work our minds while we're sheltering, so we kind of stay connected. So some examples of hobbies that people are doing, is learning about all the edible mushrooms and then going for a walk and identifying things as they're doing it. Going to a park or different trails in the area, scrapbooking, learning a new language, learning a new instrument, doing puzzles, household projects. Actually, my husband and I know we had started long before COVID started because it took us a long time, but we finished building our screened-in porch. It was something we always wanted. It took us over 2 years to do because it was pretty much just the two of us. It was good that we didn't know that it was going to take us that long, let me tell you. But but still, I think doing things like that, doing projects like that, you don't even need anything that big. You can do very small things in your household, and it can really make a difference in terms of how you feel. Anybody doing anything different that they want to share? Thank you.
Yeah, many of you may already know this. The University of Cincinnati offers the Usher Lifelong Learning Institute for older adults. It was always in person, and it went to a Zoom version, but it turned out to be fine. And so I amped up the number of courses I took and felt like that was a good, learn things that otherwise I wouldn't study, something totally different from normal, which I think is sort of the COVID hobby idea.
Yeah, that's what a great idea. Thank you.
Try to learn some Spanish.
You try to learn Spanish?
Yeah.
That's great.
Watching Or I live with a lot of Spanish speaking people, so I was trying to learn and pick it up.
Good, that's fantastic. Anybody else?
Cooking.
Cooking? Okay, great. And so were you a cook before? And
No, I don't like to cook, but it's safer than going out. I don't have to go to the grocery. I get meal kits to my house.
yeah, oh good, that's great.
That's it.
Okay.
Related to cooking, my wife said, I'm tired of cooking. I think this whole encompassing, she's realized she loves to cook, but she hates to cook. And this has only come out during this COVID crisis, that every
Right.
damn night she has to cook dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
What else can I fix?
Yes.
And,
Exactly.
you know, we run through steak, chicken, pork chops.
Yeah, right, for sure. And you know, we used to have those easy kind of go-tos, okay, well, I don't feel like it tonight, so let's eat out or whatever. Well, that's a whole lot harder to do that, you know, than it was before. And so I think that really brings that home. So, yeah, great comments. Thank you so much for sharing those. And then, as you mentioned, you know, giving and receiving, and I think that this is really one way to help us all get in touch with things. You know, I think focusing on gratitude can really help us get through when things feel really crummy. You know, and to find those things that we're grateful for. You know, something I always encourage folks to do is to, you know, every night, and you know, I've told this to families and whatnot. Think of 3 things and say it out loud that you're grateful for today. Some days it's going to be hard and you're going to be stretching it and you're going to be saying, well, my lunch was good, you know, and that's okay. And it is all right. But I think it helps us kind of focus on the things that are positive in our life. It helps us remember what we are happy and grateful for. And it kind of keeps us in touch with that. You know, I encourage people to kind of even have a whiteboard, especially if you're doing it as a family, where you do it at dinner and maybe put those things up there. And that way everybody kind of sees it. It's something that they're doing together as a group. You can do that with friends. You can have, you know, do something online, like an ongoing messaging thing, like if you want to do the instant message thing or whatever, if you want to have it private, but just between you two, and just kind of messaging the things that you're grateful for. And so I think that that can be really helpful. But then looking for other ways to do that. You know, are there neighbors that you can take care of? Is there somebody who's not feeling well that you can reach out to or send a card to or bring some flowers to or some food? All of those things, those kind things that we can do, they boost us up and they're good to somebody else and give them the boost, kind of like what you were talking about. And I think that can really help us get through, especially when things are difficult. And then, you know, always drawing attention to those positive things, and that's kind of what we talked about with the gratitude. But, you know, having things to look forward to, I think, can make a really big difference. Any comments about this that you want to make? I mean, the neat thing is again, we've seen some really cool things come out of this. You know, I've read those things about how, like, more dogs and cats have been adopted now than pretty much any other time. You know, and just how the earth is healing, you know, and that was really interesting this summer. I don't know if you all noticed that, but just because so few people were driving, it was not nearly as, you would get that orangey color kind of sometimes on those really humid days in the summertime, and we didn't get that this year. You know, and even LA, oh my gosh, you know, you would have thought that they hadn't seen some of that blue sky in forever, and yet because of the lack of driving and things, you know, we noticed those big those things that were making a difference. And then just being outside more and doing those types of things. I loved that comment at the beginning. And then hopefully people will kind of embrace that and keep going with that. And I think that that can make a real difference for folks. So let's talk about some relaxation exercises. So these are some ways that can really, again, very concretely help when you're struggling or having a difficult day. So there are breathing exercises that you could do, and we're going to walk through a little bit of those because I'd like for you all to have an example of all of this before you walk away from here. So the first one is a really easy breathing thing that you can do anytime, anywhere when you're feeling overwhelmed. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nose and count to 7 in your head, and then hold it and count to 7, and then blow out through your mouth and count to 7. And part of why you're counting is just to keep your brain engaged with what your body's doing. It's amazing how that can just slow everything down right in that moment. So let's try it just one time. So you're going to breathe in through your nose and count to 7 in your head. And then hold it and count to 7. And then breathe out and count to 7. You can just do that a couple of times and it just kind of slows things down, and it can be really helpful for people to do those breathing exercises. There's a lot of other breathing exercises out there too, so we'll talk about that. You can do some guided imagery. And you can do this on your own. Now, all of this you can find, and we'll talk about ways, YouTube has tons of free stuff that you can go out there and find. But guided imagery is really just about imagining yourself being in a place that makes you feel really good. And so what you want to do is you want to picture that place in your mind. So for me, I'll be honest and tell you that the beach is my place. That is my favorite place in the world, the beach.
Where?
The beach.
The beach?
Yep, the beach.
As in,
like the seashore.
yeah.
Yep. Just go in there, and that is where I'm happiest. And so you want to close your eyes and imagine being there. If you've been someplace, or just even if you see a picture of something, you can imagine yourself being there. And you can picture it, and you can feel the sun. You imagine feeling the sun on your body. You can imagine digging your toes in the sand. You listen for the seagulls. You try to smell that salt air that you can smell when you're next to the ocean. Just everything that you can do to engage as many of your senses as you can, and just sit there and imagine that. Even for a few minutes, that can make a huge difference in your stress level, in your coping level, because it just kind of gives your brain that mental break that it needs, and then you can come back to things. So you can do that guided imagery. But there are a lot of things out there too. Like if you struggle to do that on your own, you can go out on YouTube and some different things and look for some guided imagery stuff. And then there's progressive muscle relaxation. I don't know if any of y'all have done this before, and it's just kind of where you start. So you're going to imagine you're going to be in a comfortable chair, not imagine, you're going to be in a comfortable chair and be sitting. And then you're just going to start with your toes, and you're going to scrunch them up, and you're going to let them go. And then scrunch them up, and then let them go. And then you're going to say to yourself, okay, I feel my toes relaxing. I'm feeling all that stress and tension go out of there. And then you're going to move up to your calves, and you're going to tighten up your calves and let them go. And then tighten them up, and then let them go. And again, you're going to say to yourself, okay, I feel my calves relaxing. I'm letting go of that stress and tension. And you might even want to visualize kind of it all just flowing out of the ends of your feet. And then you keep doing that. You move up to the tops of your legs, and then the middle of your body, kind of scrunch it up and let it go. And then your shoulders and your arms and your fingers, and then even your face. And you just start at the bottom and move up. And you want to kind of remind your brain, so just like I did, as you're saying it, like when you scrunch your shoulders, okay, I feel my shoulders relaxing. I'm letting go of that stress and tension. And again, that's keeping your brain connected to what your body's doing. You can also be intentional about it. So if something specific is bothering you, you could say, I don't know, maybe you had just a bad day or something, and you felt like you had a bad mood from the day you woke up. So maybe, from the time you woke up, so you want to just maybe be concrete and say, okay, I'm scrunching up my shoulders, and I'm trying to let that bad mood go, and it's going to flow right out of me. Again, that's just another relaxation technique that you can use, and you can find those types of things on YouTube and stuff if you want to try that out. I think it helps to have somebody kind of walk you through it the first few times, and then you can do it on your own. So try it out. You can also do yoga and other kinds of kind of quiet exercises. I think that can be really helpful for people. Just any kind of stretching or whatever is just another way to kind of relax your mind a little bit. So as we mentioned, as I've said a bunch of times, it's just looking for those small ways to take care of yourself kind of throughout the day. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to do yoga for an hour. You don't have to do breathing for an hour. You don't have to do the guided imagery for an hour. You can do all of those things for a few minutes here and there, and that can make a difference just by taking that break, giving your brain that break, and taking that opportunity to do those things. Any comments or thoughts about that? Thank you.
So I found an app, and it's called Insight Timer, and it's free, and they have, I think it's 70,000 free meditations on there, and it's like everything from like loving yourself, forgiving yourself, being grateful, depression, anxiety, and it's guided imagery, which is what I like.
Great.
And like some of it has like music or like nature sounds, so, and I just like it because it's free and there's 70,000 different ones to choose from, so.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard so many people tell me about that, and I have not checked it out yet. I need
Yeah.
to do that. Insight Timer, right?
Yeah.
What's it called?
Insight Timer.
And it's just a free app that you can
Yeah.
get. It has all this different stuff on there. So that's great. Thanks for
TIMER
sharing that.
timer.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like lately I've been listening to one almost every night because I'm like you, I love the beach, and he's like telling you like imagine yourself on a beach, and like I fall asleep to it almost every night.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Good.
And I've noticed too, because I fall asleep to it, like you can tell it to lock your phone when,
Oh.
so in case you fall asleep, like it's not just sitting there awake and lighting up the room.
Oh, good. So it'll just shut off for you.
Yeah, it would just shut the like.
Oh, great.
So, yeah.
Okay.
What's
Okay.
it called again?
Insight timer.
Yep. Timer. Uh-huh.
Mine
It's
goes
hard. No,
off.
it's hard to hear when
Yeah.
sometimes when we're talking through the masks, but yeah, it's a
Yeah,
great.
it is, yeah.
Anybody else?
This place, even though I have some friends who will not come here for fear, which is appropriate, but this place has given me a daily routine that without it, I would be crazier than I am.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible experience for me, both in relating to other people and in getting the whole body still functioning.
Yeah.
So this is, I take this and the exercises they're taking to keep it as safe as possible. There is no, the problem is for me, there's no safe place.
Right.
You can sit in the bathtub for the rest of your life, but there is no safe place. We're flying down to the beach. I'm flying down to the beach in Sarasota on Sunday. That's probably sitting on a beach with very few other people, and the wind is blowing, and that fast vaccine ain't going to get to you as easily as it would in a pub or in this room. It's not safe in this damn room.
Right.
That's gotten to me, that there is no safe place.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at my age, the other thing I've thought more about is, at my age, it's just constantly focused. People are dying,
Yes.
380,000 people.
Yes. Yes.
And 40% nursing homes, and the rest of them are my age. And that's a very, very difficult thing for me, to focus on death.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's there.
And how do you manage that? How do you deal with it without, letting it kind of overtake you? And I think that's the
Scream, yell, and call
challenge.
my therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
I can identify what he's saying, because like, I feel like I took every precaution like possible and still wore a mask, distance, and I got sick, but other people I know didn't get sick, but
Right.
I like feel like basically the only way is like I have to like live in a bubble, and so
Yeah.
I can't live in a bubble, but things I can do is I can distance, I can isolate, I can wash my hands, I can wear a mask, those are things that I can control, and that's what I can do. I guess my struggle too was like when I got sick and then I got better, it was like trying to get back onto a routine because it affected my sleep so much.
Right.
So it's like, okay, set an alarm. I'm still not back at work yet. So like set an alarm, get up at 8 a.m., eat breakfast, shower, sit on the couch, comb my hair. At some point I need to maybe go for a short little walk, kind of move around and just maybe do like one task that I can do today. I can do, because everything else wears me out. So I can do one load of laundry, or I can organize one box, or I can call, one person today. I can mail my bills today and walk to the mailbox or something like that.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I had to like kind of reset my routine. And he talked about, dealing with people dying. I think the hardest thing for me to deal with was the stigma and behind it, and then just all the misinformation out there. And that it's become a political thing where it's like it's a virus. You get sick and you recover, or you unfortunately pass. You get it's an illness. That's it. There's nothing political about it.
Right.
So in my mind, like I got sick, and that was it. So just having to deal with some of the ignorance. And it's not like people are intentionally. They just don't know.
Right.
There's just not enough information out there, that we really know about the long-termness of this virus. They're really new things every day.
False
Right,
information.
right.
Yeah, there's just a lot of
Yes. Yes.
false information. So I had to learn, like, okay, sometimes just let it go. Don't say anything. That just let it go. They're not going to change their mind. But other people I've had to say, that's really not true. you know, this really hasn't been fact checked.
Right.
The CDC says this,
Right.
and that's all I can do.
Right, exactly right. And that is all you can do. Yeah, really good comments.
Dr. Fauci.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So humor is another really good way that can help us get through things, you know. I think looking for opportunities, as we kind of talked about, looking for those funny things, looking for the funny TV shows, looking for finding ways to have humor in all this, I think is very helpful. It's good for our immune system, it builds us up, it does all of those things. And so I think looking for specific ways to kind of manage that and incorporate humor in your life can make a big difference and helps us do that. I think we can get easily caught in kind of the dynamics of everything that's swirling around, and it helps us again feel all that kind of weight of the world, and looking for ways to laugh and laugh things off can be helpful. So this was something that one of my coworkers came up with, and I just really loved it. I don't know if she found it on someplace, but you know, another, it's kind of the humor and making fun of things and making light of things, and having the COVID bingo about, you know, did you cut your own hair? Did you take online classes? Did you, you know, plant a garden? Forget what day it was. You know, it's just kind of a funny way to do this, and you can, it's just another way to do it. I bet if you look that up, I bet you can find a COVID bingo out there. And then taking care of our own health. You know, we've kind of talked about that throughout the presentation, but making sure that you're doing the things that you need for good self-care. You know, continuing to exercise and making that time for it, or the energy for it. You know, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep. Keeping our nutrition in mind. I think for a lot of people, you know, that's been hard in some ways and then easier in others, because we're cooking more at home, but sometimes that can be challenging, is that cooking, but we're also eating more snacks at home, and so, you know, it's that balance of trying to make things, you know, trying to keep that balance is what I'm trying to say. You know, limiting our caffeine and our sugar, and then making that time. And I just kind of want to touch on the alcohol too. I've heard a lot of people talk about this as being an issue, especially during this COVID time. So many people are using alcohol and drinking more because it's easy to do. You know, they just come home and have a cocktail or whatever at the end of the day. And that can be okay, but I think what I'm hearing a lot of people say is, you know, they kind of realized that it was too much for them. You know, they couldn't keep doing that at that same way. And I think, you know, alcohol can be fine, and it certainly has its purpose, but there are certainly residual long-term things that happen. If we're all struggling with depression already, alcohol is a depressant. It just is. It's that stimulant when we first drink it, and then it's got that residual depressive effects. And so being aware of that, if you're not feeling great and things are not as good, so being aware of how much alcohol you're using and whether or not that's impacting you, I think can make a difference. So we've kind of talked about some of the different coping skills, how we're learning to survive. Any comments or questions or last minute thoughts? Yeah.
So my biggest problem during COVID is the things that I used to do during normal life. I'm just, even though I have more time during COVID to clean the basement, to be charitable,
Right.
I'm not doing it. When I don't have to do stuff, I don't do anything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I can't get off the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
okay,
that's-
or is it bothering you?
It's bothering me.
Okay.
I feel guilty. I have more time than ever.
Yeah.
That's true.
But I
Yeah.
think, you know, I think it's also helpful to give ourselves some grace and remember kind of what is impacting us. And it's taking energy from us to just get through the day.
Right.
And that is the reality of it, in a very different way than ever.
Literally.
I think it very much depends on who you are, what age you are, whether
Yeah.
you have children, don't have. Because at 86 years old, I have the issue that you have. I love to write. I have written the whole thing on coronavirus, about 28, 30 pages. I just quit writing because I'm bored. What the hell can I say that the New York Times didn't say?
Yeah.
And so I've just gotten very bored with doing one hell of a lot of stuff. Now, I'm not working. I'm retired from 14 different professions, so that's a problem.
Right.
I'm bored out of my bloody mind.
And so maybe making small goals. So I think, for me, I start to get overwhelmed when I start thinking about the big projects, like cleaning out my basement or doing whatever. And so is there a small thing? So I made a small goal over the holidays because, this is what I do all day. I talk to people, I do that. I don't have a lot of energy for that when I go home. So when I was off for a chunk of time over the holidays, I called a friend from college that I probably haven't talked to in like 7 years. And so, that was really great. And I felt so good afterwards. But those things take energy. So identify a small thing that you can work on, a small thing that you can do, whether that has to do with self-care, whether it's reaching out. The charitable things, you can do small things and they can make a big impact. And so I think looking for those ways to do that can be helpful, and also to give ourselves grace. It's a lot right now. It just is. And so that's okay. Thank you.
I'll take it day by day. So
Yeah.
some days I have really good days, and some days I have crappy days, and I don't get out of bed. But then I think to myself, okay, that was yesterday, or that was today. I'm going to go to sleep, and tomorrow's a new day.
Right, right, good.
Good way to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's all we can do is keep moving that way. So, well, thank you all. Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Just one thing that I found the hardest is because I've been having to work from home full time since March, and I'm single and I live alone, and the loneliness because I'm used to being in an office every day, Monday through Friday with people, and now literally I have my cat. Yes. And just like I don't know when I'm going back in the office, and it's hard sometimes, like at night, like I've been all alone all day.
Yeah.
So that's something that I still struggle with.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
It does, and I think like it's different because a lot of my friends have families, and so it's like they don't get it really. I mean, they try to, but it's like they don't really get it all the way,
No.
Right.
Yeah, I understand.
They don't, and I do
Yeah.
it.
But all the weird, cool things you've been able to teach your cat.
She's not gonna know what to do when I have to go back to work.
I know, exactly. She's going to be lost.
I'm in the same boat, so.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
like the hardest thing.
And that's a very hard thing to say, too.
Yeah, it is hard. I've kind of learned to sometimes at work I'll just call people, like my friends and other, like that I work with, or like after work, like I'll call them sometimes and just talk for like an hour or something.
Yeah.
But like it's still hard.
It
And, like
is.
it's the continuation of it, of, having to stay at home and places
Right.
being shut down. And that's really, like you said earlier, like this really helped out a lot, like being able to come here,
Yeah.
have something to do, like just walking in and like saying hi to people. Like I remember when we went into quarantine and like going to Target, I think I scared people because like I was like super excited to like talk to somebody that's human. But yeah.
And we get, our daughter North gave us the New York Times for a year, which is, it depends. It's a good paper. Some people hate it, some people not, whatever.
Right.
But if they print one more damn article about what we could do to beat COVID boredom, last week they had a 7-page crossword puzzle fix that you're supposed to sit down and. I do a little family therapy still. I've cut it way down, but I had a family come in 2 weeks ago. I call them the COVID couple. They're both working at home. They're a child 1.5 years, a child 4.5. They like each other. However, I think probably homicide might be an option.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
They're gonna work it out. It's okay, but boy, that's,
Yeah. I think that is certainly a very, very challenging
Oh, yeah.
part of it. Yeah.
husband and wife working home with 2 kids.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And who handles the 2 kids most?
Right.
What?
Who handles the 2 kids the most?
In this couple, it's mom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
I mean, that's the
So
pattern.
added stress.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
And there's people trying to have their business Zoom meeting and their kids like in the background in like their underwear and like.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
It ain't easy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
I love having this participation, so thank you so much for doing that. Boy, it just makes